All right, in today's video, we're going to take a look at the mySol-Ark app, the new version. So the new version that has just been released. Now, you didn't get any kind of notification about the new app, so you may not even know that the new app is out there. If you go to the Play Store, you'll find, if you look up mySol-Ark app, that there's another version now. So it doesn't replace the one you've already got, so you can continue to use that one if you prefer that one, or you can install both and use both, or just replace it. I keep both of them, so you can definitely do that. And right now, the newest version isn't compatible with certain other devices. It works great on my brand new Pixel 10a, but it doesn't work on my tablet, whereas the old one does work on my tablet. So those are some things to consider before you go and just remove the old app. Is it may not necessarily work on all of your devices, so definitely test it before you start removing things. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So now here is the new app, and as we can see here, I've got every single widget added here, so you don't necessarily need to have all of these. If you don't want them, you can kind of pick and choose which app widgets that you want on here. And if we scroll to the top here, we'll see this one right here is very similar to this one right here. Again, I don't normally have both of these. I typically like this house version here. So that's usually the one I leave on my screen, is that one. I don't typically have this one. But if you're more of a simplistic, this one works great too. Sometimes I look at this and the house in the background is a little distracting, and it takes me a second, especially when I first started using this, to actually get familiar with everything. But as we can see here, we've got the amount that my solar is producing. Now this is a nice upgrade. I had mentioned in a previous video where I was talking about the software, where the Sol-Ark knows, because I put it in the settings, that my solar is going into the gen port as AC coupled, but yet it was still showing it as not solar. Whereas now this is actually showing that I've got solar and it's producing 7,000 watts right now. And then I'm exporting 280 watts. So we're overproducing. And if we look at here, we've got our solar, and then I am charging my batteries here, and my house is currently consuming 840 watts. So again, a very clean, simplistic interface here. I tend to like this interface. And again, if we scroll down here a little bit, we'll see that this is essentially the exact same information. And then we can see our battery charge here is at 90%, and then our temperature, and it's just kind of a sunny day, although that then I think is a little overcast. And then we've got our generation chart. Now, I really like the generation chart that they've got on here. Much easier for me to use. I've got some color issues I've mentioned in previous videos, and I had mentioned toggles work great. This isn't toggles, but this is about the same thing. So if I go ahead and hit the solar, for example, it is very obvious that I've removed solar from this. Same thing if I remove the battery here, or if I move the load, then I can just see the grid and the state of charge. So it becomes very obvious what is selected and what is not selected. So even though and actually with these colors, I can actually see these a little bit better than the previous versions that they were using. I'm not sure if it's the dark mode or if there's something else, but I can see these colors much better than the previous one. So I can, for example, I can look at the grid here and I can see the grid, even though that's really small, which is good. I'm not using a lot of grid. I can see the state of charge is this color here, and I can see that much more intuitively. I do still have a problem with the load and the solar, but it is a little bit more obvious which one it is. I can typically figure that out, and the battery does stand out. So I think they did a really good job making this compatible with people that have color vision issues. I think that this is much easier for somebody with color vision issues to read and understand when looking at this. And again, you can go through and click on the month, or you can go through the year. Now, in the case of the month and the year, I tend to think this is even easier to read. I do think that as far as the colors, putting the solar, load, charge, so these are in the order also that these bars are here. So it makes it a little bit easier. I can actually tell that these are different colors. But I can also look at this and I know that it's in this order, and I very easily identify what I'm looking at. So this is actually incredibly easy for me to read. And in the case of import, which is kind of nice, I can see that I'm not doing a lot of import, as we can see in April here. Had a little bit of it still going in March, a lot of it in February. And then we can kind of see the history here from the Sol-Ark perspective for this. So again, I think this is a pretty well-designed app. Now, what if I want to change what's on my screen here? All I have to do is come up to the option up here, So if I click that, we'll have the customize option. I can click that, and now I can remove things. So if I don't want this one, which I don't want, or if I didn't want that one, or maybe I want to add. So if we come over here and we hit the add button, we'll see that we've got essentially the different cards that we can look at. And as we can see here, we've got the solar production option, and we've got the battery, and then we've got our grid balance. And then we've got this one. Again, that's the one we just demonstrated how to remove. And if we go back up here and click this, we can see that we've essentially got most of those in here. It looks like I don't have the generation, so let's go ahead and add that in here. So we'll go ahead and add. And then we got our solar production right here. And if I want to move that, maybe I want the battery above that. So I'm going to go ahead and long hold that and then drag that down so I can change the order of everything that's on here also. And then once I like everything, I can go to the done button up here and hit the done button. So again, I think it's a pretty good app. I really like how they've got everything set up on here. Now, if you have VPPs, you can go ahead and hit the money symbol down here, and that will show you your VPP information. We don't have VPPs in our area, so there's not gonna be anything there. And then if we come over here, we can also hit the notifications area. Again, no notifications for my unit. And then we've got our settings gear here, so we can go ahead and hit that. And then we got our account information, our alert preferences, our display mode. Now you do have different options for display mode. I like dark, but you do have the option for light or auto depending on the time of the day. And let's go ahead and hit the back button here. And then let's go back to our main screen here by clicking this. Now, one of the other things you can do is hit manage your device. So if we go ahead and hit that here, and then we can come up here and hit this setting option here, and then we get all of our different settings that we can adjust. So if we wanted to do our battery settings, for example, we can adjust and make all the changes that we need to in here, or we can come back into, hit the back button here. And then we can go to our system work mode, which is generally where we spend most of our time, is in the system work mode here. And we can make all of the adjustments that we want in here, just like we were doing in the previous old version of the app. And if we go ahead and hit the back button here, all of our settings that we had before are in here. And I couldn't see that there's any big differences that are in here. It looks pretty much the exact same, but there might be a couple that I missed or just didn't see. I don't spend a lot of time in my settings now that I've got everything kind of the way that I like it. It just kind of autopilot, and I don't have to really come in here and modify anything. I spend most of my time back on our main screen here. And this is generally where I spend most of my time, is looking at the generation and seeing where we're at, making sure that I'm getting up to a full charge on my batteries, and just kind of keeping track on how my production has been going. So I spend most of my time these days just kind of looking at this and just kind of checking the overall system performance. I really like this app. There has been some people that have said that they don't particularly like this or don't find it very helpful, but I generally think this is a pretty good upgrade. I think it's a little bit easier for me to use personally, and I do think that this is more in keeping with a lot of competitors out there that have really well designed apps. I think this is going in that same vein, is trying to get a little bit more of a professional view for the Sol-Ark product. I tend to think that the previous iteration was not very well designed. It definitely wasn't, it definitely didn't have that really nice looking interface that we kind of expect in 2026. It was much, much older design methodology, but I tend to like this. I think it looks pretty good. And it's actually usable for me. The previous one was pretty much unusable, especially when we talk about this chart. It was not easy for me to read the way that it was set up before. Now, don't forget, if you like this kind of content, hit that like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow. That's pretty much it. I wanted to just cover this new interface and make sure everybody was aware that they have a new interface they can download from the Android App Store. I believe it's also on iPhone. So if you're an iPhone user, you can definitely go try and get this. Let me know in the comments if you don't have access to it. I believe it was launched on all devices at this point. Now that's it for today. Hope we found the video helpful. Until next time.